So hello guys, once again I welcome here all of you in this marathon session of highway engineering and transportation engineering. You say yesterday I discussed railway engineering. Today we're gonna discuss airport engineering. Okay, basically today we're gonna cover airport engineering only according to gate point of view. Okay, only the we covered syllabus that came into your gate examinations. That's it. So in gate examination from airport engineering we have two things that from there's a lot of questions from runway design and taxiway design. Basically these two things only in gate syllabus from airport engineering. Okay, otherwise airport engineering is have a lot of syllabus in it in undergraduate levels, but in gate syllabus we have only runway design and taxiway design. So we'll discuss it. Okay, so let's start our airport engineering. Airport engineering. So in airport engineering, first we'll first go with runway design. Runway design. Okay. So in runway design, let's discuss about a correction for elevation, temperature, and gradient. So correction for first we take correction for elevation. Correction for elevation. Guys, I want to recall you once again. We'll here in this marathon session we'll discuss only numeric portion, because a lot of questions in gate are from basically look, the gate is aptitude test, so there is a lot of question from numeric portion. So we'll discuss here only numeric portion, numeric things. If you want to know theories of all these things, go with your book or any other materials. Okay, so you'll get theory of airport engineering, but here we'll try to discuss only numeric things. Okay, and obviously previous year questions also. So in correction for elevation, look, ICAO, look, basically ICAO is International Civil Aviation Organization, recommends that the basic runway length should be increased at the rate of 7% per 300 meter. Okay, 700 7% per 300 meter in elevation above the mean sea level. So basically ICAO, it is basically International Civil S- Aviation Organization. Remember that. Okay, basically ICAO recommends that basic runway length recommends that basic runway length should be increased at the rate of basic runway length should be shit man basic runway length should be increased at the rate of 7% per 300 meter 100 meter 7% per 300 meter rise in elevation above the mean sea level. Rise in elevation above the mean sea level. Above the mean sea level. Okay. So this is basically this is the correction for elevation, that 7% for per 300 meter rise in elevation above the mean sea level. Okay. So yeah, so this is about the correction of elevation. Let's move on to the correction of temperature. Correction for temperature. Correction for okay correction for temperature. So in in temperature, we have one thing that air force reference temperature, and we have formula for this, that airport reference temperature. Basically, we denote it as ART, airport reference temperature. We have formula for this, that TA plus TM minus TA by 3, where TA is monthly mean of average daily temperature. Okay, TA is monthly monthly mean of average daily temperature. Okay, and our TM is monthly mean of maximum daily temperature. Monthly mean of maximum daily temperature. Okay, and remember one thing, that these monthly means these month for this is denoted for the hottest month of the year. For the hottest month of the year. Of the year. Okay, so in this, according to ICAO, in International Civil Aviation Organization, in this ICAO recommends that basic basic runway length increases 1% for 1 degree Celsius in airport reference temperature. Okay, so this is about correction for temperature recommended by ICAO. And one more thing, in correction for temperature, that temperature gradient becomes 0 above altitude. Okay, that temperature gradient becomes 0 above altitude. Okay, above altitude, that is at 15.6 degrees Celsius. Okay, and our standard atmospheric temperature, basically our standard give me a sec. Standard atmospheric temperature at mean sea level is taken as 15 degrees Celsius. Okay, so this is about correction for temperature recommended by ICAO, and this is standard temperature at mean sea level. Okay, so do you remember these things, this formula and this recommendation by ICAO, and these two things? Okay, let's move on to another thing, that check for total correction for elevation plus temperature checks. Okay, let's move on the another thing, that check for total correction for elevation, total correction, give me a second, total correction for elevation plus temperature. Okay, look here also ICAO recommends that combined correction exceed 35% of basic runway length, and then these corrections should be further checked and specific studies at the site of model testing. Okay, so like ICAO, here also ICAO recommends that recommends that combined correction exceeds 35% of basic runway length, then these corrections should be then these corrections should be increased by should be increased by give me a second should be increased by at the rate of increased by rate of 20%, increase should be increased by rate of no, ICAO recommends that combined correction exceed 35% of BRL, then these corrections should be not it should not be increased. Wait a second, it should not be increased. Yeah, it should be, because it is check, so it should not be increased. It should be further checked by should be further further checked by specific studies where at the model at the site by model testing at the site by model testing. Okay, so for check of total correction for elevation plus temperature, ICAO recommends that combined correction exceeds 35% of BRL. Shit, man. Combined correction increase 35% of BRL, then these corrections should be further checked by specific studies at the site. Okay, by model testing method, by model testing at the site by model testing. Site by model testing. Okay, so this is check for total correction for elevation plus temperature. Let's move on to another thing, which is correction for gradient. Another thing, that correction for gradient. And for gradient. Okay, here ICAO recommends no correction for gradient. Look, basically ICAO recommends no correction for gradient. So who recommend correction for gradient? Basically ICAO recommends no correction for gradient. So ICAO recommends no correction for gradient. Then who recommends? Then FAA recommends. FAA means Federal Aviation Authority. Okay. FAA recommends. FAA recommends that after temperature and elevation correction, Basic runway length should be increased by the rate of 20% for every 1% of effective gradient. So FAA recommends that after temperature and elevation correction, basic runway length should be increased by the rate of should be increased by the rate of 20% for 20% for every 1% of effective gradient. Okay, so this is recommended by FAA, Federal Aviation Authority. So this is all about in runway design. This is one thing is we completed one thing, runway design in airport engineering. What we completed: correction for elevation, correction for temperature, check for total correction for elevation plus temperature, correction for gradient. Let's move on to the next topic in airport engineering, that taxiway design. Taxiway design. Okay, so in taxiway design, basically we go with geometric taxiway design, geometric design of taxiway. Okay, so basic in here, let's, if we talk about length of taxiway, then if we talk about length of taxiway, so for the sake of fuel consumption, it should be short as, okay, it should be short, length should be short for the sake of fuel consumption. Okay, so that it will save fuel, you know. So it should be short, as it will save fuel consumption. Okay, so this is for a length of taxiway. And in taxiway design, we also design width for safety area and width of taxiway, and we also design width of safety area. Okay, so let's move on to next thing, that longitudinal gradient. Not longitudinal gradient. Yeah, so in longitudinal gradient, basically ICAO recommends that maximum longitudinal gradient should be 3% for A and B types, and A and B types of airport, and 1.5% for other types of airport. So in longitudinal gradient, ICAO recommends that maximum longitudinal gradient should be 3% for A and B types of airport, for A and B types of airport, and 1.5% for other type of airport. 1.5% for other types of airport. Okay. So this is longitudinal gradient. Let's move on to the transverse gradient. What? Transverse gradient. Transverse gradient. So in transverse gradient, for quick drainage, transfer gradient is 0.5% for rigid pavement and 1% for other cases.